what are these violent patrols? Here. His name is Neil, a good friend of mine. There was a sharpshooter, which is a sniper for closer distance. And he describes in his testimony these violent patrols. Well, this was following, there was a call-up one night. Meaning we went in with 2 APCs, and we started driving towards Abu Snena. This road we just see in front of us. This was after there had been too much shooting in town, meaning the Arabs started shooting in the direction of the Jewish settlement, and we fired back. Well, sometimes we used to go in there to demonstrate. When the shooting would get out of hand, we simply go in, would go with the APCs, pay a visit to Abu Snena, just to make our presence felt. Do all sorts of things. Shoot at some houses, just to intimidate them, so, I don't know. Just so they won't try again. Anyhow, that night we went with 2 APCs, one of them belonging to the company commander, that's the one I was in, and another one following us. And what we did simply in order to deter them, we simply moved through Abu Snena with 2 APCs, and all what we did was shoot. Shoot. We were shooting. We stopped by a house, we moved through a street, and we fired at houses. Not at windows, we fired at all kinds of houses. And I remember I was like a slightly better shot. He was a sharpshooter. My task was to shatter streetlights. And I remember that I fired a car windshield. And one of the soldiers who was with me fired a rifle with a grenade launcher right into a shop. Simply into a Palestinian shop to blow up the shop. And all this for no good reason. I mean, deterrence. And not one of us asked himself what he was doing in order to actually, by way of response. I remember myself that night. I really meant it when I said it was me who fired at streetlights, me who fired at cars. Because it was me, among all those soldiers, I was shooting. And I remember that not one of us that night, all of us were happy that we got the opportunity to shoot at streetlights and cars. Because there's nothing so cool. Nothing like hearing a streetlights blow to bits after you've taken aim at it. And I remember us doing it with such determination and with such a smile. And I don't know. I consider myself someone who actually did think of what he was doing during his army service. And tried to avoid doing such things. And I remember where this reality how it managed to sweep me into doing these things without consciousness, without any thoughts. Maybe yes afterwards, but what good is that? Simply with a shit-eating grin on my face.
How old are you?
19 years old, 19 and a half, 20. Now, the reason I chose to read a testimony by Neil, this is not the only testimony about these things. I chose to read his testimony because he talks about himself. Because I think, he grasps, in this story, he grasps all the reasons why we call ourselves breaking the silence. First and foremost, because the first silence that needs to be broken is, first of all, an individual one. It's our own silence. It's to understand. Because back then, it was making your presence felt. Violent patrols, deterrence fire, preemptive fire, response fire. There was a headline, there was a logic, it was very coherent. Making your presence felt. But actually this story also ties me to another silence that needs to be broken. Called the silence of media, of society. For 4.5 months, almost every night I was shooting dozens of grenades here. My parents woke up the next morning in Jerusalem, not far away, it's up, 40 kilometers. Turned on the Israeli radio and heard a sentence that every Israeli knows by heart. IDF forces returned fire to the sources of fire again. Sounds okay, right? What's the problem? I don't remember once recognizing sources of fire. Anyone who was in combat in urban areas will tell you it's impossible to identify sources of sporadic fire. But comes a moment that you understand that this is how the information comes back home. Sources of fire sound familiar, Gaza? Okay? Yeah, you can recognize sources of fire there. Yeah, radars, everything. When you use some stuff like artillery or mortars, which are inaccurate weapons by definition, that are statistical weapons, in a place like Gaza, you can say you fire back to the source. Yeah? Again, the devil is in the details.